Oh, hello there. My name is Professor Bentley, and I'm in the midst of reading the Book of Virtues written by William J. Bennett. But this podcast, I would not like to discuss this interesting novel, but I would like to talk about another very fabulous novel called Tangerine, written by Edward Bloor. I've carefully analyzed this fabulous novel, and I would like to discuss it with all of you listening to this fabulous podcast today. Tangerine is about a confused, legally blind teenager, Paul Fisher, who finds himself in many difficult situations where he is forced to make decision after decision. The Fisher family consisted of Paul, his mom and dad, and his terrifying older brother, Eric, moved from Texas to Florida the summer before Paul enters into the 8th grade. When they arrived in Tangerine, Florida, Paul and Eric attended Lake Windsor Middle School and Lake Windsor High School respectively. After the natural disaster of the sinkhole at the middle school, Paul transferred to Tangerine Middle School. Here, he became very close to the soccer players on the team, as he loved to play the game of soccer. After spending a lot of time with the Tangerine kids, his brother, the star field goal kicker for Lake Windsor, killed the older brother of one of Paul's close friends, Tino. This fast-paced novel ends with Paul making the decision to not side with the brother who permanently damaged his eyes years ago, but to tell the truth for his own friends that his brother was indeed the person that killed Luis, the brother of Tino, that awful day. Paul sees life in a new way after he tells the truth and is revitalized to go about life in a new direction. The author, Edward Bloor, did a magnificent job in moving the plot along and creating messages for the reader to carry on into their own life. Bloor wrote this novel with the purpose to show how important decisions are in one's life. Paul, many times throughout the book, is forced to make a decision, whether it is to be friends with a person, tell his parents about the despicable actions of his older brother, or basic things like deciding whether to stay home from school or not. Bloor displays what he is trying to get across to the reader through great plot development and through characterization. I can connect with many of the things Paul encounters in the novel, mostly on making tough decisions. I can specifically connect to Paul when he gets into a fist fight with his brother. I get in fights with my brother all the time, whether it is over a pickup game of basketball or video games. The thing that contrasts, though, from Paul and I is that I truly love my brother, while Paul learns to hate his brother for many actions taking place in the novel. Edward Bloor created the story based on his own life and about his childhood. Bloor, born in 1950, throughout his childhood was vulnerable to the game of soccer as soccer started to grow rapidly, especially in his hometown of Trenton, New Jersey. The game of soccer is a pivotal driving force in the story, as most of Paul's motives are involved with him playing soccer. The year this novel was published, in 1997, has a lot to do with the significance it plays in the literary world. Bloor addresses many questions during the early 21st century, like many environmental and social issues. During this time period, many people were becoming more interested in the environment and how it works, especially with the topic of global warming coming into the social realm of discussion. He also brings up social issues at the time, where family-oriented families were starting to thin and die down compared to previous years, like the passionate and peaceful 1970s. He tackles this in his novel by displaying the relationship between Paul and Eric by being terrible. Bloor, though, gives insight through the narrator, Paul, on how he tries to improve the bond with his brother and what is going through the mind of a terrified younger brother who just wants a brotherly connection with his only sibling. Edward Bloor does a fanciful job of combining problems during the time period while helping to give solutions to the problems through the brave teenager and Paul Fisher. Tangerine is by far one of the greatest literary pieces of all time. It has received a number of awards, like the American Library Association Top 10 Best Books for Young Adults in 1998, which is only a year after the release of the book. The plot of the story keeps readers' eyes glued on the book while maintaining messages and themes that he wants to get across to the reader. Tangerine is one of the best novels I've ever read in my life, and I strongly encourage you all to read this novel. I have to say that it has been a very life-changing experience for me to read the story of young Paul Fisher and the troubles he has with his brother Eric. Now, I would like to end my podcast with one word of wisdom to everybody out there listening today. If there is one thing I've learned from reading this novel, Tangerine, I would have to say that you must, and I have to repeat, you must form good relationships with the ones that are closest to you. That means your family, your outside relatives, so maybe your cousins, your aunts, your uncles, your grandparents, all the people in your family, your friends, your colleagues, your teachers, your professors, and most of all, yourself. I would like to end my podcast by thanking all of you and join again next week for Gordon Bentley, Professor Bentley's podcast. I will be expecting you. Good day.